Welcome to the Tactical Business Podcast. I'm your host, Wade Skalsky, and today I'm talking to Candi Feiro from Dead On Shooting Range from neck of the woods where I kind of grew up, a little bit to Minnesota adjacent. But Candi, how are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Did I get the last name correct?
It's Feiro.
Feiro, close enough. Sorry, I apologize. I have a tough last name too, so people always massacre my name, so I do apologize for that. But I am excited to talk to you. And we have and actually just from the kind of talking before we started the recording, we definitely have a lot of things to kind of dive into that I'm excited to talk to you about. But the first thing is how did you get into sort of the firearms business? You know, what was the journey that took you to where you are now?
It was totally random, really. Before I started working here, I was working in investments at a credit union, and there was a lot of big changes in the credit union, and I just was getting to the point where I wasn't happy with where I was. So I started looking for another job, and this place was getting built at the time that I was looking for that job, and it's built 3 miles from my house. So we're kind of out in the country. It's just out in the middle of nowhere, and I thought, it was worth a shot to apply here because I'm actually legally blind, so I can't drive. So I was getting sick of always having to get a ride to work, and I thought being this close to home, I could ride my bike to work. So I came for an interview with no hope at all because I had never even touched a gun in my life before I walked in here to interview. But it was a big change, and I thought, maybe it's what I need. So I was surprised when I didn't even make it all the way home, and the previous owners had called me back and said that they want to hire me. They liked the fact that I didn't have firearm knowledge because I was trainable that way, and they could train me without having bad habits in my background where I would be teaching people the wrong way to hold guns and anything like that. So I've that was almost 7 years ago at this point, right when they opened. I think they had been open maybe 2 or 3 months before I started here, and I've learned so much in my time here now, and worked my way up from working behind the counter to assistant manager to manager, and then last year well, it was 2 years ago that they gave me the opportunity to actually buy the place. So last year is when that got finalized.
Yeah, that's an amazing story, sort of like from, going through every single position from the very entry level all the way up to now that you own it. Walk me through a little bit about how that has changed your perspective on sort of the business model, right? Because I'm sure that they did some things when you started that you were like, okay, I understand why they're doing this. So I might do this a little bit differently. So did that process change how you look at the business in general?
It did, yeah. I had never been in a position of ownership before, so I I guess it didn't change my work ethic. I've always had very good work ethic, but as far as, when when I would put in orders for things, I think about it a little bit more, whereas before I might have said, oh, we need 5 of this. Now I look at it and think, oh, we might only need 2 because I don't really want to pay for 3 extra that I don't know if we're gonna sell, but yeah, there are some things that change about it, but much of it is still the same for me because I managed it for so many years before taking over that it wasn't too hard of a transition, really.
Well, and you knew that it worked, right? So obviously, you're going to maybe make a little tweak here and there as to the standard operating procedures, but if it's not broke, don't try to fix it, right? And
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, and how long have you owned the business now?
Just over a year. I
Oh,
signed the papers at the end of April of last year.
and I don't want to get too far into the weeds if you don't want to, but we are a business podcast, so can you walk me through generally like how the financing works? So like, did you do an SBA loan? Did you sort of have your own capital? Did you get investors? Like, what did that look like generally?
It was a huge process. It took over a year to get it completely finalized. I originally had a partner that I was going into the business with. He was a friend of mine from high school, and he had worked here, so he was familiar with it. And that kind of fell through after going through the first portion of the process. So the bank came to me and said, "You know what? I think you can do this yourself," which was really scary for me because, like I said, I had never owned a business before and really didn't know what I was doing, but they had confidence in my abilities, so they walked me through it. It was great. There was a gentleman from the bank that basically held my hand through the whole process. So there were actually 7 different finance financing places that came into play to get the loans for this. So they all kind of took a portion of it, and then I had to the I would say my biggest hurdle in the whole thing was getting life insurance. So I had to get a separate life insurance to cover the loan if something was to happen to me, and that was that was quite a process getting someone to insure me for as much as I would need for the loans for this place. But yeah, I mean it was made as simple as possible by the folks at the bank, which was really nice.
And now, so there's two things that I think would be great to talk about, for people that may be thinking about buying, buying a business. Now, was it a local bank in terms of in Minnesota, or was it like a bigger, or sort of just like a Chase or a Wells Fargo or whatever?
It's just a local bank.
Right.
But the SBA did, finance a portion of it too. And then we've got the Economic Development Fund here in Duluth, Minnesota. So they did a portion of it, and there were a couple of local places really that did it. The biggest one was the SBA, though.
Yeah, and I think that's important for people in that are looking in the firearms business, is that you cannot underestimate the value of local relationships and local connections for these types of things.
Yes, and I mean, that's something that I use in my business as well. I carry as many local products as possible, and I'm always looking for more local businesses to have their supplies in my stores. So the fact that I was able to get financed through a lot of local places was really great.
So let's talk a little bit about the store itself. So I know you've got a range at the store, you have retail, and it's a relatively new structure because it's about 7 or 8 years old. Now,
Yep.
but you're in a kind of a rural area. So how does that impact your marketing? How does that impact sort of your clientele? Because the town that you're in does not have a lot of people in it, right? Like not as
It doesn't, no. And we're actually about 8 miles outside of the closest town here. So it's not super far out, but it's far enough. But it doesn't seem to hinder people from actually coming here because for one, it's northern Minnesota. Eight months out of the year, it's usually too cold or nasty outside to shoot outside. So we get a lot of people coming in during that time. But we are the only indoor shooting range in northern Minnesota. The closest one is maybe 2.5 hours away from here. So we kind of have a niche market where, if people want to shoot inside, they have to come here, which is great for us. But we also offer classes. So we do permit to carry classes, Pistol 101, AR 101, women's self-defense. And we've got some other classes coming up now through the USCCA. We have a full-time gunsmith. So he's an awesome gunsmith. He refinishes old firearms that have been in fires and floods, and he builds firearms, laser engraves, Duracoats, Cerakotes. So we kind of have a one-stop shop for everything firearm related here.
And that's what's great about that, is that is, so I grew up in North Dakota. I came through and it was a long time ago, but it was, it's a hunting culture. And
Mhm.
but then also too is like, now that you have sort of the AR stuff coming in, you have more of like the Cerakote. And so it's you find that that's being embraced a lot in your business, or is it more towards the hunting side? So kind of break that down for me, like in terms of like, because to me it would seem geographically that you would do more hunting, rifle sort of, but
And
is that true?
yeah, you'd think so, but not so much here. So we do have a store just a few miles from here that they're kind of like a fishing outdoor hunting store that they sell a lot of the hunting rifles. People come to us for the really cool stuff and the really expensive stuff. So
The good,
we mostly
the Gucci gear. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, we've got the $7,000 guns sitting on the counter and the different ARs and the really cool Cerakoted stuff. And they know that if they want something unique, they come to Down Arms.
So yeah, and that's great too, so that you don't. And then, do you have a good relationship with the other store that's kind of close to you guys?
Yep. Yeah. We both send each other, our customers. If somebody comes in here looking for something like a Benelli, I'll send them over to them because I know that they can carry them and they've got the hunting stuff. Where if they go to them looking for an AR, they'll come, they'll send them over here.
So All right. So you buy the business. You've been doing it for a year now. Has the business, is it different than it was? Like, or I should say, what is different from a year ago when you kind of ran everything, you knew everything, and then you bought it? Like, what's different now? Like, what's different in the last year?
I've changed some of the products that we carry, because I see a change in the clientele that we have here. We have a lot of preppers that come in here. So I started carrying military surplus, and I started carrying freeze dryers and different emergency preparedness books and magazines and first aid kits, things that help with that kind of thing. So I see a lot of that kind of stuff now leaving the store, which we didn't have that anything like that before. Not saying that the previous owners didn't, cater to their clientele. They had an idea of what they wanted, and they kept it at that. Whereas since I've worked among the customers for those 6 years before I bought it, then I was able to see what people were actually looking for and change some of the inventory based on that.
Yeah, and one thing I think is invaluable is that market research. You cannot replace, the top of the funnel at the counter talking to the customer, because if you keep hearing the same thing over and over again, that is an indicator of, hey, there's some demand out there that maybe we can meet. And the nice thing about prepper goods and services is that they don't expire by nature, right? So
Right. Yeah.
you don't have to worry about the shelf life of, food you're selling. So all right, so do you have a plan? Are you going to kind of stay kind of what you're doing right now and see kind of how that shakes out? Do you have a plan for expansion? Like, what does the next few years look like in your mind?
You know, I haven't thought that far ahead yet. Some days I'm working on just making it through the day, but I have 17 acres on this property here. I would love to make some sort of outdoor area where people can. I don't know that I would so much do an outdoor range, because there are horse farms butted up to this property, and I really don't want to scare their horses. But we have people that are looking for like an airsoft range or a paintball range. So I've thought about doing stuff like that outside. But I am actually working on expanding as well, not so much with Dead on Arms, but my boyfriend and I are actually in the very end stages of creating a military surplus store in one of the other buildings on this property here. So we kind of are taking some of the military surplus that Dead On is carrying, and now we're just going to carry it over there. So that's kind of the expansion that we're going for at this time. As far as Dead On Arms, I feel like if it's not broke, don't fix it. So I'm kind of staying on the same path and making sure we have income coming in to continue the business.
Well, and that's the one thing is that I think people, once you find your core offering and you know that you're selling it and people are buying it, that gives you the opportunities to kind of take some chances in other areas, but don't mess with the core offer, right? And
Right.
I think that's wise. So what are, for this military expansion business, then what is the thought process that you went through to decide, okay, we're going to expand this? Because that's pretty nichey, right? Like military surplus is a very, I would say that your customer for that is they search for that, right? It's not something that it's not an impulse buy to buy military surplus. It is a very specific
Right.
customer. So what led you to do that?
It's the preppers that come in here, really. I mean, between that and the people that just are outdoorsy up here. I mean, this is northern Minnesota. We have a million hiking trails, and there's a ton of people that go camping and backpacking around here. So that's kind of what led me to start looking into that more, is people were looking for that kind of gear, um, between the freeze-dried food, like I said, or the surplus gear where they've got the big packs that they can carry everything. So just kind of started exploring that, and you talk to customers and ask what kind of stuff they're looking for. So it's kind of nice to see when they walk in and they see the surplus gear in the store, and they get all excited because it's something that they haven't seen in this area in years.
Well, and what's nice about that too is then the dead on shooting range can be like a testing ground for those
Mhm.
products, right? So like you could say, all right,
Yep.
so we don't have to buy a million of this stuff for the circle store. We can kind of test run it, in the regular retail store, and then if it does well, then okay, we can start just send it over there. Is that kind of the approach that you're going to take, you think?
Yeah, that's kind of what it's been. We've had the surplus gear for a few months now, and it's really gotten a good reception. So I thought, well, it's worth putting our energy and time and money into actually opening a whole store of just that stuff.
Do you think that that part of the sort of the survivalist prepper niche up there is because of the geography and it gets so cold, right? And so what I mean by that is like, so I live in Virginia Beach, and every once in a while, every few years, we'll get a hurricane or something, and that will shut everything down, and then there won't be electricity. You have to worry about water, like so. There's like this
Mhm.
natural extension from, hey, I need to be more prepared. So it's not necessarily we're going to have Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, but I need to be prepared for a week, 2 weeks, a month. Do you
Oh
find
yeah.
that that is the type of that's kind of like the bridge to that, or is it really people? Are you getting more people who are like, no, 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 I want to be off grid. I want to be prepared for it to be like this for a couple of years, or a mix of all in between. Does that make sense?
I would say it's a mixture of all of that, especially with the political climate being what it has been lately. I think there people that never thought of having their own garden and growing their own food and being able to sustain their own household are now discovering that, that this might be something we need in the future. So yeah, I think it is a mixture of both. It's the cold weather that keeps us, hunkered down for months out of the year, but it's also the thought of what could happen in the future. What am I going to do if the power grid goes down, or if something crazy goes on with the government and I can't get a hold of my money? I need to be able to eat and feed my family.
Yeah, it's interesting because for me, as someone who lived in North Dakota, I always viewed Minnesota politically as kind of similar to North Dakota. But I grew up there, like the 80s, the late 70s, and so that was a long time ago. But now I look at Minnesota, and the state's getting kind of squirrely, right? So I mean, in terms of its politics, and so it's much more it's not a monolith of politics like it used to be, right? It's much more
So,
diverse now in terms of the what's going on. Are you finding that is leading to some of the uncertainty in your customers? It's just a sort of like what it was happening in Minneapolis and like all those issues.
oh, absolutely, yeah. And that's, when you bring up what happened in Minneapolis, that was unfortunately, but fortunately, it was one of our biggest selling times. I mean, we started carrying ballistic vests, and those sold like crazy because people were going down to the cities to help with the riots and everything. So yeah, it's a little bit of all of that mixed in, I think.
Yeah, I never just thought I would see riots in Minnesota like that, just because the people are, at least in my experience, they're so chill, and it's
Yeah,
just now that volatility. If there's that volatility in Minnesota, what is the rest of the country experiencing? You know what I mean?
yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's more so down in the Twin Cities. You do get it up here in northern Minnesota, but it's in the larger cities like that, you're definitely going to find it because you have all walks of life of people down there.
Right. Well, but if there's, and this is the one thing I think people don't think about. If you're in a city, you got to think about what you need, right? Because that goes down. But then if you're in the country, a lot of people, if something really goes down, all those people from the cities are going to go to the country, right?
Yeah.
And so then
Yep.
you're gonna have a whole other set of problems too. Um,
Yeah.
and I think that being prepared now is it's much more on people's minds and much more of a possibility. Whereas before, maybe it was like, oh, maybe there's like a 10th of a % that something's going to happen that I need to be prepared. But I don't know what the percentage is, but it's not, it's higher than it used to be for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you think about even 5 years ago, if somebody was to walk up to you and say that they've got a 50-pound bag of rice in their basement and they've got, jars and cans of food, you'd look at them like they're crazy and, wonder what's wrong with them. Nowadays, you look at them and think, that's a good idea. What else do you have?
Ice lasts a long time. Um,
Yeah.
let's talk a little bit about, I want to talk a little bit about kind of, we're going like a 30,000 foot view, and I want to come back down a little bit to the store and talking about the gunsmithing program that you have there, because, you actually, on your website, you advertise it, right? Like it's a selling point. So it's like my range, for example, they have a gunsmith on there, but I have no idea what they do. I don't know what the services they sell. It's just something that they have, and you have to go ask, right? So
Mhm.
walk me through your gunsmithing program. Walk me through how that came about, because I think that for brick and mortar stores, um, that is a that is an area that is very under publicized and under marketed. In fact, I don't know if I've seen anyone on brick and mortar recently that we've interviewed market that. So I'm really interested in that. So kind of walk me through how that works, your decision to do that, and the program in general.
Well, for one, there's really not a whole lot of gunsmiths around. You know, it. if you find one, they're probably 60, 70 years old. They've been doing it since they were young, and they might not even be certified to do it. They're very good at fixing guns. That's usually what you find, at least in this area. I don't know what it's like in the rest of the country, but having a gunsmith who's younger than 40 is pretty rare around here. So we've had one since we pretty much since we opened. I think our first gunsmith had started right around the same time I did at the store, and we've since he's left, but now we've got this great one that we've got. He's been here for I think 2.5 years at this point, and he had gone to the Sonoran Desert Institute, so he got his licensing through there, and he's just kind of fiddled with guns his whole life, so he had that background of being very familiar with how to work firearms and how to fix them, and he's one of those people that he's great to have around because you can give him anything, and if he's never even seen it before, he'll take it apart and figure out how it works. So he does that with his guns, with the range. When things break down in the range, he can fix those things. I mean, he's kind of like the handyman of the store. So it's really nice having someone like that can look at something for 5 minutes and tell you exactly what's going on with it and what parts he needs to order to fix it.
Yeah, and it's one thing about like expansion, right? Like let's say if you're a gun ranger or you're a brick and mortar store and you don't have a gunsmith in there, it's a natural expansion as an add-on service, right? Because especially
Yeah,
for if you're for your offering. So like you have the more high-end gear, so
mhm.
if someone's gonna get, a Daniel Defense AR or something, they're like, yeah, I will pay to have it cleaned, like sonic cleaning. I will pay to get it laser engraved, whatever I want, because that is just a natural. If they're going to spend $7,000 on a gun or 2,000 or through 4,000, they're not going to worry about that add-on cost. It's in alignment with the offer.
Yeah, and we actually kind of sweeten the deal too. So if they buy their guns here, any firearm that they buy here, we give them 4 free sonic cleanings every year. So that's been a really popular thing, and it gets it out there more too, that people know what a sonic cleaning is, and they tell their friends, and they bring their firearms in to get cleaned too.
Yeah, walk me through that. Like, what is that? Because I actually have never. I mean, I can kind of figure out what it is, right? Like, but walk me through because it's not something I think that is out there a lot, and I think if people might
Yeah,
be interested in that.
it's basically like a giant jewelry bath. It's just this big tank with liquid in it, and it emits these sonic waves, which kind of shakes the carbon free from your firearm. So once it's done going through there, the gunsmith will take it out and he scrubs it down, and sometimes he has to really work extra hard to get a lot of carbon out. So he'll take a brush and scrub it up, and then he just oils it. And we always tell people your gun's going to come out looking newer than it did coming in for sure. Because it comes out nice and shiny and clean and working properly, which is, I would say, 70% of the firearms that come in here with people saying it's not functioning. Can you do something? It's just that it needs a really good cleaning.
Yeah, and how long does it take? So is this like if I wanted to get a gun sonic cleaned, and I have a reason for asking this, like do I bring it in and drop it off, or is it kind of a I will do it while you wait, or both?
Yeah, I mean, technically, yeah, you could wait while it's being done, but our gunsmith is at any point in time, he's anywhere from 2 to 3 months behind. He's got so much work in front of him. So we just have everyone drop it off. And then once a week, either the gunsmith or one of my other employees that helps the gunsmith, he'll just do all the sonic cleaning. So he'll take everything that needs to be done, put it all in the tank, and then put them back together and send them off.
Well, what's great about that is that it brings the people back to the store, right? So yeah, so if I'm gonna bring my gun back to the store to have it sonic clean, I'm physically in the store. I'm gonna wander around the store, and maybe buy something else, or I'm gonna, you know what I'm saying, or if I have a
Yep.
billing issue with my range membership or whatever. So I think that's a genius idea actually, and so I'm gonna write that down.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the things that I had learned from the previous owners. I would get nervous in the past when I would see too many people lining up in the lobby waiting to get helped, and they'd say, you know what, let them wait for a little bit, because if they're in the lobby waiting for 2, 3, 5 minutes, they're going to start looking around to keep themselves busy for a while, and that's when they start thinking, oh, I might need this or I might need that.
Yeah, or they've been thinking about something for a really long time, and now's the time, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, and I'm very get the gunsmith issue is at the top of my mind because my dad's giving me one of his guns, and it's like this like obscure to me. It's like a Finnish rifle. It's a lever action. It's like really old, and so I need to get it. Like I need to somebody to look at it and see if it still works and clean it and all that.
Sure.
And that'd be awesome to be able to just drop it off and be like, okay, just fix it.
Yep.
And then if a gunsmith at your store was to do that for me on something that was important, like a nostalgia item like that or an heirloom item like that, it binds you to the store emotionally, right?
It does, yeah. That's something that we get a lot of here too. We will have somebody bring in a rifle that was their grandpa's, and the rifle itself might be worth $75 at this point, but he puts in $300 worth of work because something's wrong with it, where it's not working, or it doesn't look right, or the stock is broken, or any number of problems. And they just want it to look and function like normal. They don't care what it costs because it's that sentimental value. And yeah, those are the people that come back here because they say, oh, Sean fixed my gun and he made it look so great. I got to see what else he can do. Can he build me an AR, or what can he help me find?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the nostalgia heirloom aspect is something that I think is really important to understand because
Mhm.
so my dad gave me and I have a twin brother and we both got um Ducks Unlimited 20 gauge shotguns, single shot when we were 12, right? And so like
Nice.
when I went back to visit my dad a couple of weeks ago um and that's the least and so that's my gun, right? So he had it for whatever reason. And so that is the least valuable gun of all the guns that he has, right? It's like worth like $300, praised him like $300 or something like that, right? But it's the most valuable gun that he has in the whole collection for me, right? And so
Oh, absolutely.
if I'm going to give that gun to somebody, because I want to give that to my son, right? And then I want them to like clean it and check it out and make sure it's all good. That is, if they do a good, the flip side of that is if they screw it up, obviously you're going to be mad. But if they do it right, it really does emotionally attach you to whatever store did that. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
think is a very powerful selling point.
It is, yeah. And that's one of the biggest praises I have for my gunsmith is he is extremely meticulous about everything he does. He just had a guy bring in an AR, or he brought in parts for an AR to have him build it. And then he had fought in Desert Storms, so he wanted him to do the desert camo on there. So he airbrushed desert camo, and it took him a couple months to do it because he didn't like the way it turned out the first time. So he sandblasted it, redid it all over again. And, on the customer's side, I can see where it might get a little frustrating thinking, I want this done. But on my gunsmith side, he's thinking, this is my work. And, if I'm gonna have you paying for this and you want this heirloom that you're gonna pass down to your children, then I want it to be done absolutely perfectly. So I have to praise him for that. I mean, he's really good at what he does.
And usually I'm not into credentials, right? So I'm like, oh, credentials, whatever. But I will say for something like that, like if you get a certification from, I keep on saying the Sonoran Desert Museum because that's in Tucson, but if the Sonoran Institute, right, or something like
Yep.
that, like to go through that process automatic for something that's with your hands like that, right?
Yeah.
Like that I think that is a very big selling point because you kind of want that like nerd is a long word. Like you want that like super hyper focused person on the mechanical,
Yeah. Yep.
Because me, when I take my AR apart and I put it back together and a spring flies out, I'm like, does it still work? Do I need that spring? Like whatever, but you don't want to be doing that with your guns. Like that's why I take it to somebody else. I'm not super.
Yeah.
Um, let's talk a little bit about, and I love this model a lot, which is the continuity model, right? Which is okay, you have like a monthly membership, right? Um,
Yep.
is it always been in this model in terms of the price points, or does that fluctuate over time? Or like, how do you figure out what to charge? Because the cool thing about continuity is that it gives you so much more stability with your business because every month, all right, we're roughly going to bring in this much money. Like, so kind of walk me through your philosophy on that program.
Well, you don't have to have a membership to shoot in our range. So we offer the membership because you get those perks that are listed on the website. But no, if you wanted to come in, we have specials every day of the week. So we have a ladies' day, and we have a student and teachers' day, youth day, date nights. we have senior specials, so we have ways to make our range prices cheaper, but for people that come even more often than that where it would behoove them to just come in on the special days. Then we have the memberships. And yeah, as far as I can remember, I don't think we've ever changed our membership prices. They've always pretty much been the same. We've had to raise our range rates a little bit just because propane is so expensive, and in the winter it takes a lot of propane to heat that range. Um, but no, the memberships, I always look at them as, that's what keeps our lights on. That's that monthly income that I know is coming in every 15th of the month from those memberships. I can count on that being there for, some of the monthly bills. So it's nice having that too.
Yeah, and I think even if you don't have a range, there are other ways to do continuity for brick and mortar, right? And so and that is something that I think is, you can build an entire business around that continuity, because all right, well, like you said, and that's also a focus point to grow too. So you're like, well, how do we teach our sales staff to upsell for the range? How do we make it more attractive? All those situations. Now, are you ever thinking about doing another range somewhere else and expanding the model in terms of a franchise somewhere else? Or is it more of like, hey, look, it's because the geographic advantage that we have, it'd be hard to gain that somewhere else?
If I was 10 years younger, maybe, but no, I think at this point I just want to live out the life of my loans and make sure the business stays where, going as well as it is. And if somebody else eventually wants to take over and open another one, then by all means. But that sounds like a lot of work
Well,
to me.
that's important about business, right? So it's know thyself is a business strategy. It's not a platitude, like it's what makes you happy, what you want to do. And I think where you are geographically, it's funny. I was laughing because when you said it takes a lot of propane to heat the range, your brain wrinkled about 85% of the audience. So like, what? Like, why would you need propane? You want to just plug it in? Like, why don't you just have the electricity and heat it? Like, it's just funny. It makes me laugh. So it's the being up north. Well, and that's the thing too, is I think to go back to the continuity for a little bit, is that people don't understand the geographic advantage you have of 6 months of winter. Like, that's not 6 months, but like once it snows October, November, no one leaves. Like, you do not do anything outside. Most people don't do anything outside all the way.
Most sane people don't.
Right. Until what, April? February, March? Like, I don't know. I don't know what it is like for you. I can't remember. Like, it was a long time.
I mean, gosh, in recent years, it's been June before we could really do a whole lot of anything outside. We've had so much snow, but it depends on the year. Like last year, we had a brown Christmas. We didn't even have snow, I think, until January, which is extremely unusual. It's usually October when it starts snowing around here, and it'll still be snowy into May typically. So we have a lot of long time that we have to be kind of inside.
Well, they get the wind chill. Most people don't even know what that is.
No,
it makes me laugh. Well, and you're a little bit farther north than I was, basically North Dakota, but the people do go hunting. People still go and ice fishing. Do you have any? This is an interesting question. Do you have any ice fishing gear in your store, or anything?
No, we don't do anything with fishing. It's purely firearms.
That's the other store down the street.
The other store, yep.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about your classes. We have good kind of runway for us to kind of walk me through, because you kind of have like a tactical bent to your store, right? So for the classes, are they mostly top of funnel? Like, what I mean by that is like, basically just kind of entry level classes. Do you need tactical classes? If so, why? If not, why? And what is your thought process for the philosophy behind the classes?
Yeah, other than permit to carry, we do have, like I said, we have the pistol 101 and AR 101. We have a defensive shooting fundamentals class too that it is put on by a USCCA instructor, and that's more of your tactical shooting. It's hard to have anything too tactical here because my insurance would not be happy if they found out people were drawing from the holster and they were, going from lane to lane shooting and everything. So we have to keep it a little bit boring, I guess, if you want to call it that. But No, we definitely have the opportunity to teach some of those classes. We just have to watch what we do actually in the range.
That makes sense too, because you talked about the life insurance issue earlier for key man or key woman insurance, in case something happens to you. Is those are the insurance part, and like the highly technical those types of things can really trip people up, because they're those are like hardcore business concepts, right?
Yeah.
Is there anything else like that? Obviously taxes and all that, everybody knows about that, but is there anything other than the insurance stuff that really is like very business technical, that you have to deal with, um, that's not firearms related? Does that make sense? Because yes, you have to do the FFL and all that, and everyone knows that. But from just a business perspective, other than the insurances, is there anything else technical like that you have to deal with?
I'd say the biggest thing is keeping up on the laws, which is
Mhm.
hard because they're changing so much. We get so many questions. I've got our local ATF guy in my phone, and he is very familiar with my number coming up because we have so many laws that change all the time. I mean, we just had another one change now in Minnesota where they finally deemed um, it unconstitutional to prohibit a kid between 18 and 20 from carrying a firearm. So now they can take our permit to carry class. They can't purchase a gun, but they can carry a gun. So, that when that first came out, what was it, 2 weeks ago, I think? We called him several times. Are you sure? Can we do this? This just doesn't seem right, and it's that's the big thing is making sure I'm keeping up on the laws and making sure the employees are keeping up on the laws, and passing the word along to each other so we're all on the same page.
So that's just you talk about your ATF agent, right? And so like, I was a lawyer in a past life, right? So um, people get real hinky when it comes to, especially in the firearms community, bring up the word ATF and they get real squirrely. But I think it's important if you can get a good relationship with your ATF guy. That's the guy that comes to your range and checks everything.
Mhm.
If you get a good one, you can actually have an okay relationship with the ATF people. And most of the guys
Yes.
that I've talked to, they're trying to do the right thing. You know what I mean? And that's of course you have people who are not great in every industry, but I do find there are ATF agents out there who are just trying to do the right thing. They're not trying to jam everybody up.
Yeah, and that's what I would say about my local guy too. Is, I'm always comfortable calling him. And if he's calling me, I don't get nervous thinking, what did I do wrong? Because I I know we're doing the what we should, but he's also very willing to work with us. So if I have any kind of question, he will walk me through every step of it to make sure that I'm following the law and following the rules how they should be.
Yeah, because it's a he didn't make the ATF guy didn't make the law, right? And he's not the guy making the orders on the top level. He's just a normal dude for the most part. And
Yeah.
I know I'm going to ruffle a lot of feathers, and I'll probably get some hate mail with regards to that. But from a business perspective, it
Hmm.
is it's different from being a gun owner, right? From a business perspective, it's in everyone's best interest to try to have a good relationship with the people who enforce this law. And if
Oh,
you
absolutely.
and if you, it's just like your bank, right? Like if you have a good relationship with your bank, it's more likely you're going to get a loan. If you have a good
Yeah.
relationship with your ATF guy or any other regulatory body, even the IRS, from a business
Mhm.
perspective, you're going to be more likely to get some wiggle. Whereas if like you're giving everybody the middle finger all the time, you screw up because we're all human, it's not going to go as well.
Right. Yeah. I agree.
So, but again, I don't have a gun store, so I can say stuff like that about the ATF. So I won't put you on the spot about the ATF. But oh, let me ask you this: do you guys sell suppressors?
We do.
Walk me. Are you getting these ridiculously fast approval times up there?
Yes and no. And we get that question multiple times a day. And right now, I can't keep suppressors on the shelf. It's hard to even get them in stock right now because so many of them are selling out from our distributors because people have heard about the super fast wait times. It's definitely faster than it was maybe a year or two ago. But I was just on our ATF site the other day, and I was looking at what my longest wait time is so far, and I've got one from January 16th that's still waiting to be approved. So I have those, but then I also have ones that I want to say my fastest one came back in 4 or 5 days. So it's
That's correct.
totally random. It makes no sense why some are 7 months long and some are 5 days long.
Yeah, there was a range that we talked to, and one of their part of their business model was is that you could they let people shoot the suppressors at the range while they were waiting, right?
Yep, that's what we do too.
Yeah, so that's smart. But then, like, because it takes so long, it brings them back to the range. And then so I was always wondering how he was feeling now that they're having some of these super fast times, because that actually was part of his business model.
Okay.
I don't know. That's me just mumbling to myself. But no, but the suppressors are an interesting thing, because that is in alignment with kind of what your business is. There anything else like that? So, like, are you in the knives stuff or the tactical knives, or or other than suppressors, is there other stuff that's in alignment with kind of your guys' store like that?
Yeah, we do have knives, machetes, all sorts of really cool knives. Again, we like to carry the ones that people are looking for, not just the typical Leatherman maybe that you keep in your pocket. But we've got a few large knives that our gunsmith has done some really cool laser engraving on, and those are always big sellers. I mean, once he's done with those, puts them in the case and they're gone in days.
Yeah, and that's again, and and I know we're getting up on time here, so we'll kind of like land the plane, if you will. But that there are these collateral benefits to some of these things. So, like, you have the gunsmith, you have the laser engraving, but then you can actually, like you said, like, laser engrave the knives, which then make them sell faster, and then these things kind of all start to work together, right?
Yeah.
Do you have an overall philosophy in terms of trying to make everything kind of fit together in your mind, or is it something that you just discover and it's kind of like, oh, we're going to go there, or kind of how do you plan that? Are you like a planner, or are you a discoverer, or both?
I'm a little of both. I'm definitely a planner in so many aspects of my life, but when it comes to this business, it's more, like I said, listening to customers and what they're looking for. If enough people say that, they're looking for a specific thing, I'll throw it in the store. And if it works, it works. If not, then, I know that I'll move on to something else. But I like to think that I've got organized chaos up here, and I just kind of follow where I think it should go that month.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've really enjoyed talking to you. I think it's such a great start. What was the position that you started at in the store? Were you like
Just
the
sales.
sales, like floor, like on the floor? Yeah,
Yep.
I mean, that is such a great story that you kind of started at the bottom, and then it's an American story, right? It's like you just started at the bottom, and then now you own it, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's so great. I just think it's a great story. So I really enjoyed talking to you
Thank you.
today, Candy. So how do people find you? Um, in socials, obviously the website is deadonshootingrange.com, but how do people find you?
Yep, so they can do that. They can call us at 218-729-9689. They can find us on Facebook, kind of. It's Dead on Arms on Facebook, but I'm constantly getting banned on there for posting pictures of what we sell. So I'm currently on a 30-day ban on there, so you won't see anything on there for a while. But they've restricted my Facebook page to the point where you have to scroll all the way to the bottom of your feed to even find us when you search for it. So do some digging, you'll find us. I put some cool stuff on there when I'm able to. And I'm learning how to use X, so I'm trying to get a little bit more of a presence on there, because I hear that they're a little bit more easygoing with some of this stuff. So
Gun Twitter is where it's at. So if you want, I will stay on afterwards. I'll give you some stuff about Twitter, but when I stop the recording, but I tell every single person I interview is that Twitter is the safest place to be on social. And then, you want to drive everyone though to your own email list, because who knows what's going to happen with Twitter 5 years from now or 3 years from
yeah,
now. But and then, is there a contact form on your
there is. Yep.
on your website? All right, great. So that was people, because you may have people that want to reach out to you, and other people are interested in the business, buying the business, or getting some insight or connecting with you. So because you just have a great story. So, well, Candy, thank you so much for coming on today. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Thanks for having me.